Hello, Riga. My name is Yanina, and I'm from Minsk, and it's a great pleasure to be here. If you don't mind, I'm gonna speak English because I was kind of preparing the presentation in English, and that's probably what I'm more used to. I was born in Minsk, Belarus. Then I studied in Chicago, Illinois, and now I work in Minsk at a company called ScienceSoft. And the fun fact about me, I like avocados. Today, during this presentation, I'm going to walk you through a journey called Tyler Journey. The reason why it's called Tyler Journey is because I have a small app called Tyler, and I decided to convert it into an app that can also be an instant app. So the way I see this journey is a journey from Gradle 2.3 to Gradle 3.0, because this is a lot of what it involves is moving from 2.3 to 3.0 Gradle build tools and Gradle. So when we convert a regular app into an app that can be an instant app, we get two different builds. An app that can run as an instant app and a full app that is installed on a user's device. So by definition, an instant app is an app that is not installed on a user's device, is accessed by a link, and essentially it performs just one single task. So let me give you an example. It's not my personal example. I used it from a blog post that I read on Willow Tree. So there is some credit to those folks. So suppose you're in a parking lot and you want to pay for your parking. So this kind of sucks, right? Having to pay for your parking on like these big machines, especially when it rains. And what if there is a huge line when you have to pay for parking? So it would be more reasonable probably to have an app so that you can walk away from your car and pay for your car using an app. But of course I would not install for every single parking lot that I go to. I would not want to install an app, pay for my parking, and then never go back to the parking lot again. That would also suck. So an instant app is actually a really good use case for this kind of example. So what exactly is the purpose of an instant app? I like this definition that's also coming from Willow Tree. An instant app is intended to complete whatever task they're set out to do. It's usually one single task, and it has to solve the user's problem as quickly as possible. So how do we see an instant app as developers? Or how do we see converting a regular app that we have into an app that can also become an instant app? When we will go through converting an app into one that can also be an instant app, we will need to extract a feature module. Sorry. Yeah, now I know how to do it. So we need to extract a base feature module that will be present in all the modules, and every single task that our app can do will be represented by one feature or one instant app and can be accessed by a given link. I also want to mention that in every feature that we extract, there has to be at least one link, because a link is an entry point to an instant app. Here is probably a more comprehensible diagram of how to understand this. We have the same code base. We have one app module that's for our regular app, and we have one instant module. That's going to differ for the two builds, but an app module is going to have a number of features. An instant module is going to have usually one feature, and then there's going to be a feature per instant app, and each of them are going to have a base feature. So a base feature is shared across all the features. Then for our installable app, all the features are provided in the build. For instant app, there is one instant app per feature. Does it kind of make sense, or more or less? Okay. Like I mentioned, this is a journey that I had to go through to convert an application into one that can become an instant app. In brief, my route looked like this. I decided to check what apps exist already that are instant apps. Then I had to refactor my own app, and then consider probably my application for publishing. So step one is to investigate what apps exist. So examples are Zillow, Wish, Vimeo. Those are the companies that were working together with Google when they were developing instant apps, like testing it out, working with the beta version. And now they are available, and at some point I decided to try them out. And I'm going to show you later the result. And the second one was to check whether an instant app actually can run on my device. Do I have a device that can run an instant app? So this ugly font is on purpose because I copied and pasted two paragraphs from two different articles on Google. The first one is a page about instant apps, and it says that Android Instant Apps supports the latest Android devices from 6.0 level API level 23 through Android O across more than 40 countries. I was not able to figure out what those 40 countries are. There is no link or reference whatsoever. And we will be rolling out to more devices and countries soon, including expanding support to 5.0 devices shortly. I also don't know exactly when this shortly is going to come up. Another even more interesting page that I found on support.google.com site was, note, Instant Apps is currently only available on some devices. So my first experience exploring Instant Apps was actually quite crazy. At first I could not launch any of the apps they mentioned in the previous slide, like Zillow and Wish, and I had at that point a Nexus 5X, which was running on 7.0, which according to that definition is supposed to run, except I was not sure if Belarus is one of those 40 countries where it's available. So I was quite confused. At the same time, I was able to enable instant apps on my device. So I kind of can, but I kind of could not really use any of the instant apps. Later, I discovered some links on how I could use those instant apps, and I have here provided actually the screenshots from Wish app, and I think BuzzFeed is coming up. So here is a slide that represents that an instant app looks exactly like a regular app rather than like an app in a browser. Although you do load it using a URL. An interesting slide here is when we expand the navigation drawer, it has an install button. That's because it's an instant app. It's not installed on a user's device, but a user can press install and the app will be installed on their device if they choose to. Another interesting thing is when they are going to show in your recents. When you press the recents button, your instant app is going to show with this kind of sign that's going to tell you that this is an instant app and not an installed app. But also, all your instant apps can be controlled from one place, and this is in settings when we go to Google and then press Google settings and then go to instant apps. And here you will be able to see the instant apps that you have navigated through. Oh, here is another one. Okay. Now I want to tell you in greater detail about this Tyler journey. So what were the steps that I had to do to convert my app to Gradle 3.0 and to also extract an instant app module from it. So the first step was obviously to get Android Studio 3.0, then to download Instant Apps SDK, determine what my features are going to be, enable deep linking for the URLs that are going to serve as the entry points, set up a host for my app, refactor the code according to the modules, finally run, test, deploy it, and so on. So step number one was to download the Android Studio 3.0. Step number two was to download Instant Apps SDK. When we go to the SDK downloader, SDK tools, and make sure that we have Instant Apps SDK installed. All right, easy enough so far. Step number 3. Before we actually start to refactoring our code into features and modules, we have to decide what are the features going to be and what's the wisest way to go about it. How do we want to break down our app into small features, and what are those tasks going to be, so that each feature serves a task. In my app, it was pretty simple. So what the app does is user is able to upload a picture that they have on their device and press a button, and it's going to become like a puzzle. And then I was thinking, maybe in future I'm going to decide and work further on this app. Maybe I want to make a game 15 where like user can move those puzzles and put it together, and then it gets all mixed up again. This can be my possibly future features. And I think for now that's it. It was enough actually, because this was the point. I decided to choose a simpler app before I learn and get quite handy with instant apps. So the next step was to enable deep linking. So once I knew what those entry points are going to be, I wanted to provide a link for each of those entry points. So that's actually quite easy. If you like GUI tools, you can go to Tools, App Links Assistant. It's also good to do it first time, then you know, and then once it's ready, you can see what it has done for you, what it has generated for you, and then you can actually do it by hand. It's pretty simple. So when you launch this Deep Links Assistant, then you want to create a URL to activity mappings. So it lists all your activities. You can provide a host and a pattern, like for example, in my host it was like Yanina, which is my my name and my domain that I use, and then /Tyler app, and then for each activity that I had, I would provide a path pattern. So I actually in that. This is a different screenshot, but I only had one activity, and I had to provide just one URL for this test, and that's it. Then it gets generated. What gets generated is in a manifest file, just like when you use regular deep linking, it adds this data block with the host that you use, the pattern, and the scheme. Has anyone used deep linking before, like just for users to be able? You have? Okay. Yeah, and that's pretty handy. The only difference is that when we use instant apps, we are not allowed to use custom schemas. We have to use HTTP schema. Everything else is pretty much the same when you do deep linking, and then you just handle the deep linking also from your activity, for example. Next one. Then you have to set up a host. Actually, here the sequence doesn't really matter that much. You can set up a host first and then can set up a deep linking, or vice versa. Personally, I never really hosted anything. I'm more like a client-side developer. So I figured out that Firebase hosting was actually very easy to get going with. It didn't require much learning experience whatsoever. So I went to Firebase, created an account for myself, and it generated for me some ID, and that's it. And then I was able to host. What I need to host, what I needed to host is a JSON file that Android Studio generates for me. I need to make sure I created this slide. If I haven't, I can just later show it on Android Studio. It creates a specific assets.json file that we need to host at a specific path segment for our host. And that's it. Everything else is not needed unless we want to have a custom page in case user's device is not compatible with instant apps and go crazier about specifically like the web part. So what did it involve? To me, it was all new, so I just, in case, decided to also include it for yourselves, guys. Maybe you also haven't used. Actually, have anyone of you used Firebase hosting before? Okay. a few people. That's cool. Yeah, so I had to have I had to run npm, provided that npm is installed, I had to run npm install -g Firebase tools to install them and to deploy them in a folder that I want to use for where I host this JSON file. I had to do Firebase login and in Firebase init and then call Firebase deploy. That's it. So we are set with creating deep links. We are set with creating hosting. Next step is refactoring the code according to the links and features that I came up with. So the way how all the tutorials from Google recommended, which I followed when I was trying to learn how to create an instant app, is you take your base app module that you have that at the top of the Gradle file has a plugin com.android.application and convert it into a base feature module and then create separately an application module. So you would take the entire app module that you have and replace this apply plugin Android application with an Android feature, right? Then you also will have to remove your application ID from there and put it in the new application module that you will create. The reason why it's easy is you just have to make a few rearrangements in the Gradle file, but you don't have to move all the code. The code stays in one place in your base feature module before you extract it further down into features. And then in the Android block, make sure that you include base feature equals true, that it knows that it's a base feature. So every time we convert, there has to be a base feature. There can be from 0 to infinity regular features, but there always has to be a base feature with our base code. So that's going to look approximately like this when we have, so remember about the apply plugin com.android.feature. Oh, that's already app module. Oh, sorry. So this is going to be my base feature module. It's going to have this base feature in the Android block. It's going to no longer have the application ID because the application ID will be in the app module. The app module we will create separately. It will be totally blank. It will not have any activities. It will just have a manifest with a package name only, and it will have a relatively small build.gradle file. But the build.gradle file will have the application ID, and it will also have this dependencies that are listed. It will have all the features that we have. In my case, there is only base feature, Tyler base. If we have more features, we will also include them here. So remember, like in old build tools, we used to have to put compile. So now compile gets deprecated, and we have to use implementation instead. And then for our libraries, we have to use API, and you can read a little bit more about it. There were some new Gradle methods, Groovy methods added. Okay. When we are done with creating an application module, like now it's a little bit back and forth, right? So we extract one thing, we move things from one file to another. We also have to provide a dependency in our base feature to our application module. And by doing so, we have to provide application, project, and the name of our application module also in the dependency of the base feature module. Okay, so that's pretty much it. At this point so far, we don't have an instant app module. We just have our base feature. We have basically just slightly modified our Android application so that we can add an instant app module, but we can run it as a regular installable app. And that's also enough. It's fine. It does not have to have an instant app module, but it allows us to, right? we can also run it at this point and make sure that all our refactoring has gone through all right and everything works. And now we also want to create an instant app, so we create another module. We choose Instant App when we create this new module. And an Instant App module will also be using just the features that we have extracted and the base feature always, right? So simply I copied the only thing that is needed on the Gradle file. It's the apply plugin will use Instant App, and the dependencies that will be used is our base feature, and then we can have per each Instant App module we can also use some additional feature. That's it. So it all seems quite easy, and also when I was looking through a bunch of tutorials, they made it also look extremely easy. And when I was looking at the Google I/O videos, they even made it look like, hey, it took us just 15 minutes to demo you out how to build an instant app. So I thought, oh, that's simple, that's cool. Like, really have to make a few modifications in the Gradle files, and that's it. And then I have to create some more modules, but not even really that many modifications in the code, except for when I was building it, I had to run into quite a few problems, and it did not take me 15 minutes like on the video that they demonstrated. It took me a lot longer, and I would like to share with you some of the troubles I ran through. Hopefully, if you guys decide to do the same thing, you don't have to step into my shoes again. Well, one that was really easy, and actually you learn it pretty soon, is that you have to remove a Retro Lambda plugin in the new Android Studio. Now they have like a support for Lambda in it. But that one was easy. Now, something interesting that I discovered was, like I mentioned in this ugly slide that I copied the Google quotes from, they support Android 6.0 and above for instant apps. And they are going to release some support for Android devices 5.0. When I was trying to build an app, I was not able to build it unless I provided minimum SDK 26, which is Android O. And I also use the examples that they have to test them out. That's why some of the slides that I used are also from the demo app. And I downloaded the code. I used all the configurations except for like the I think the alpha version was no longer available, so I had to use the beta version. And the code that they provide includes minimum SDK version 24, but again I was not able to build it until I set the minimum SDK version to 26. So I'm really curious how they make it happen and what exactly the version is to make it run with anything lower than Android O, but so far the tools that I was able to download and use on my computer, they did not allow me to build for anything less than SDK 26. Another point that I wanted to add is make sure that when make sure that when you're using Gradle 3.0 in Gradle-wrapper properties file, please include this line. And point 4 is was probably the trickiest one for me, because I spotted it out quite late, and it took me quite some time to figure out. When I was moving the packages back and forth, now each module has its own Android manifest, and an Android manifest for most of this module, like app module, instant app module, they are really almost blank except for they have a package name. The real modules are our base feature module and the rest of the modules. And my application module had exactly the same package name as my base feature module. And every time I was running my own app, it kept on crashing the moment I launched it, and it was crashing with a class not found exception. So that's the reason why was because the package name was the same in the app Android manifest and base feature Android manifest. They have to match the application ID, I believe, but they have to be different in every Android manifest. So don't run into this problem, please. So my train that was traveling this journey had to make a few maintenance stops, but eventually we are arriving into our final destination. So I was able to break down I was able to break everything down. I was able to successfully run the regular installable app using these new modifications, and I was able to run also an instant app on my phone. Actually, it's also very easy to launch it. The only thing is, like, you provide the default activity when you use regular launch configuration. When you are using instant app configuration, please provide a URL that you want it to be launched at, and then you can debug it as well. That's it. Now I also wanted to share with you some things to keep in mind when you are building an instant app. Firstly, we do have runtime permissions available to us in the instant apps, and this is exactly the list of runtime permissions that are available to us. Yeah. We also have to keep in mind that when we use instant apps, all the network traffic has to use HTTPS. It cannot use HTTP. I did not test it, whether it would crash on HTTP or what would happen, but that's according to the documentation. Then also make sure that each feature module that you use in an instant app is no more than 4 megabytes in size, because otherwise it won't be possible. Also be sure that system broadcasts are not available to us in an instant app. Unique identifiers like IMEI, like MAC address, won't be available to us from an instant app. And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, custom deep linking will not work. We have to use HTTP schema. Another good ideas to use is to use instant app APIs for checking whether from this code base are we running on the device as instant app or installable app. So there is an API for that, and it's just a check, and it returns us true or false. And we can also add a prompt to install app. That's also available from instant app APIs. I also included a few good links that I personally use to educate myself on all of that, and there are also some good samples, and I also encourage you to use them if you ever decide to dive into this. And I think that my little trial, or my little investigation of instant apps in the end was successful. It finally arrived to its final destination. And yeah, now I'm here telling you about it. So to summarize, what we had to do, we upgraded to the new Android 3.0 beta version. We created some deep links and set up our host. Then we did some app refactoring and breaking down into features. And now we are ready to publish our app, provided that everything else works. Also, this is how my project structure looked. So in case the Gradle files were a bit confusing, it's really hard to put it into a presentation in a comprehensible way. But so I have a base module that used to be the original Android application module, but now it's a base module. Then there is a new application module that's almost empty, but it has the build.gradle file with the application ID, and it also has the dependencies listing all the feature modules. And we also have an instant app module that allows us to run as instant app. and also some reflection on all of this work, whether it's useful or not, whether it's good quality or not, and so on. I think I think it has some future. It's cooler than just having to, like, it's a good idea that we can use the same code base, and we can allow users not to install the app, and we don't, like, if we don't have a web app yet, we don't need to create a web app. But at the same time, for those users that have iPhones and do not want to install an app, this solution would kind of not work. So there is its own upsides and downsides for choosing whether to go with Instant App or not. It's great that the code is the same. I think that's also a big plus. But I think it's a little bit risky at this point of time to use it in production code for like commercial apps that we are working on. I would probably use it further in some of like my own apps that are either like not bringing much profit so far or just like for fun. But I think I would take some time before I take it to like big applications that we work on, like in our daily jobs. It seems risky that we may encounter more problems that we don't know about, and especially this thing that with the minimum SDK version. Like, I really don't know why they announce it, and at the same time I couldn't build it. It probably was available in some other versions of the build tools, like Alpha 3, like they use in the examples, but not in beta. Beta 4, I believe, is the one that's currently available. I wasn't able to set up minimum SDK version lower than 26.